Welcome back to The Explainer. If you've been hanging out with us over the last few sessions, you know we've been building a pretty specific case. We laid out improvement governance, and then we established a hard truth. Internal capability is your true undisputed moat when all those external market tailwinds completely die down. But today? Well, today, we are tackling a pretty brutal market reality. Who actually builds that moat? And why relying entirely on your isolated technical expertise is, frankly, a massive trap.
Okay, let's kick things off by looking at a really stark contrast. On one side of the spectrum, you have pure technical skill. Think of the incredible coder, the brilliant designer, the meticulous accountant. They execute their specific tasks perfectly, right? But they exist on a highly fragile base. It's isolated execution. On the exact opposite side, you have strategic capability. This is where your skill actually connects to a larger system, where its value becomes entirely measurable, and where you suddenly hold tremendous leverage. The journey between these two extremes, that is exactly what we are mapping out today.
All right, let's dive into part one, the technical trap, because it's so important to remember. The foundation is not the whole building.
We absolutely have to start at square one. Mastering a technical skill is, well, it's crucial. You put in the reps, you learn the trade, you get good. I want to be super clear, we are not anti-specialists here. Technical depth is the foundation of everything. But here is the catch. Competence merely makes you useful. It doesn't automatically make you strategic. I mean, imagine a brilliant engineer who writes absolutely flawless code, but it's for a product the customer never actually wanted. If your technical skill remains totally isolated from the business reality, you are completely dependent on whoever happens to be directing your work.
Which brings us to section 2, the strategic reality check, or as we like to call it, entering the machine.
So, you get hired, you enter the working machine. And at first, you probably assume the executives upstairs are playing, 4D strategic chess. They know exactly what they're doing, right? But then reality sets in, and it creates this deep sense of strategic doubt. You are executing your job perfectly, but you start noticing these undeniable warning signs surrounding your daily work. We're talking weak processes, vague decisions made without any real numbers, heavy political fog, bad incentives, and a complete lack of logic regarding what the customer actually needs. Suddenly, you realize you are surrounded by the exact symptoms of a broken strategy.
And then it hits you. This brilliant, honestly kind of painful question emerges. What if the people above me are not strategically moving toward a better future? It completely shatters the comforting illusion that someone else is safely steering the ship. But frankly, asking this exact question is the absolute beginning of your professional adulthood. Because honestly, it all boils down to this one brutal truth. Perfect execution in the wrong direction is still failure. If the external market tailwinds die down and your leadership strategy is pointing the company the wrong way, your flawless technical work, it's just accelerating the disaster. You're basically pouring incredible, hard-earned talent into a leaky bucket. Now, this harsh realization pushes a lot of incredibly talented people to just jump ship. They think, forget this, I'll just go work for myself. But listen, jumping straight to independence without strategy is literal commercial suicide. You might have world-class technical chops, but if you hit the open market with zero financial literacy, no grasp of customer acquisition costs, and no idea how to reverse risk for your clients, you will fail. Pure technical skills alone simply cannot save a fundamentally broken business model. Because here's how commercial reality actually works, whether we like it or not. The market simply does not pay for technical skill in a vacuum. Your raw capability has to translate through a very specific, unforgiving chain. First, it's technical value. But then it must become perceived value to the customer. Then it has to be actually delivered value. But we aren't done. That delivery must be measured value, and finally, it must result in profitable value for the business. Making that complex translation requires deep, systemic strategic literacy.
Moving into section 3, the system builder. This is all about sharpening the whole machine.
To bridge that massive gap we just talked about, you really have to evolve. You have to go from being a mere worker into becoming a true system builder. This is where the improvement governance we discussed in our earlier explainers really comes alive. Instead of just showing up and executing isolated tasks, you begin to actively orchestrate your environment. You delegate non-strategic work, you automate repetitive processes, you document workflows, you measure the outcomes, and you ruthlessly eliminate low-impact tasks so you can standardize true value. You start leveraging things like AI for actual structural productivity, not just to look busy in some modern corporate theater. And as you build these systems, you hit on a really profound truth. Improvement is not just some one-off Q3 project. It is literally a lifestyle. The absolute hardest thing to train into a professional isn't a new coding language or how to use a fancy new AI tool. It is this relentless, proactive attitude. It's the ethical responsibility and the mindset that says, I want to know exactly where value is created here, and I will take responsibility for it instead of just hiding in the hierarchy.
And that leads us perfectly into Section 4, the final accountability test, the -1 evolution. So here we are at the climax, where extreme accountability finally makes perfect logical sense. Take a look at this complete, continuous 6-stage hybrid builder evolution. You start with technical skill. You navigate that painful strategic doubt. You expand into understanding strategy, numbers, customers, and risk. You survive the independence test. You peak as a system builder. And finally, you arrive at -1 accountability. Radical accountability is not a clever marketing gimmick for beginners. It is the logical endpoint for serious professionals who have mastered every single layer of the machine.
When you reach the top of that evolutionary ladder, you actually earn the right to use the negative price guarantee, what we call the -1 standard. You don't hide behind excuses anymore. You accept that if your delivered value is missing, your price goes negative. You aren't just gambling on the customer having a lucky day. You are betting confidently on your own proven, systemized capability.
But, and this is a massive but, remember that a stark blue tag doesn't magically generate skill out of thin air. The capability absolutely must come first. You cannot offer extreme accountability if your technical skill is weak or your systems are broken. This standard acts as the ultimate filter for serious professionals. The extreme accountability test only ever comes after the machine is successfully built. Ultimately, you're facing a real fork in the road here in your career. The first type of professional says, hey, I know my job. That should be enough. They try to protect their isolated competence, and they usually end up becoming highly defensive to any system upgrades. But the second type, the hybrid builder, they say, I know my job, but I need to understand the entire system around it. They actively compound their skill with numbers, strategy, and ethics.
Now, I want to be super clear. This is not just another AI is going to take your job doom and gloom warning. But as AI and automation continue to compress the repetitive workflows of isolated technicians, those pure technical professionals become incredibly fragile. But the hybrid builder, the one who connects their specialized skill to real strategy, AI leverage, and measurable consequences, they become incredibly dangerous, highly leveraged, and virtually impossible to replace. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to really challenge your own trajectory. Do not abandon your technical competence. It is your foundation. But you must compound it into strategic literacy, system building, and measurable accountability. Are you going to just protect a fragile base, or are you ready to evolve and become a true hybrid builder?